Design Thinkers, my name is Matthew Sear, and today we are going to be doing some dynamic layering. I'm going to actually do something a bit fun. I used to be a game designer and also a game artist back in the day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a dynamic card for a game UI interface. So if you're interested in creating something like that, then sit back, relax, and let's jump into the video. Just before we jump into the video, wanted to introduce you to the Variable Toolkit. It's a plugin I've been working on for some time now, and now we are releasing the beta. So if you would love to jump on board, provide your comments, feedback, and be involved, then the link for the beta testing is in the description box below. The Variable Toolkit is a quick and easy toolkit to apply variables directly from your asset panel down here right to your asset without going through tedious drop-down menus back and forth. Without further ado, let's jump in the video. Alright, here we are inside of Figma. This is going to be nice and quick. Basically, we have our wizard. We have a wizard's tower in the background. We have this nice card. We got our wizard. It pops out of the frame. We got this nice kind of frame going on. Basically, it allows us a level of dynamic. Obviously, it can crush into the frame, but there'll be a point where it breaks out. Overall, we're going to set this up and be able to put this together, and then we'll be able to grab that component, reuse it across, let's say, multiple of our frames, and that means that we can have like our other cards. We could have maybe other wizards or other characters with backgrounds and so on. So let's get started. We just need basically three things. We'll need some sort of wizard or character that we want. That character will need to be cut out of the background with an alpha. We'll need to have a nice background. Ideally, you could basically have a picture, build a picture in, and you can cut out that picture and then have a blanking background. What I did this really quickly. You can see where I cut out that picture and you can still see a little bit of artifacts in there. That's okay for the time being. We're not going to get this nice and perfect, but basically in the end, you're just going to be layering those over the top of one another. A key thing to note, we want to make sure that when we build out this, we keep them all in a particular size. So I got 512 by 512, and I'm using 512 by 512, and I will now be able to start layering them together. Let's build out our frame. We're going to start with a frame. We're going to make sure this one is going to be my character card. And what I can do is, in my character card, I'll leave the background white for the time being, but I will remove this. What I need to do is actually set up a smart layering system. So I have this background frame which holds my foreground element and my background element. I also have a front level like frame that has this name of the character, and I also have my character frame where my character sits off center. So let's first of all grab our character. We're also going to apply a frame to the character itself. So we can go frame around selected, and I'll just call this character. There we go. Alright, so that's the character. Now, what I can do is, to get this extra height with the character, all that I need to do is just give it some height. So I'll just click the frame. I'm going to pull the frame up so that the frame allows for this excess height. And I can actually stretch out that character within the frame just to touch the top of the frame like so. and it cuts it off from left to right. And the good thing is, for example, I've got this character and I have him sitting there. So what I'll do is this will just be a standard frame, and I'm just going to anchor the character at the bottom so that if I was to size that frame, it doesn't change there, but if I pull it that way, the character goes on that side. All right. And what I can do is I haven't done it here, but I will do it here. We can actually turn this into a component. The good thing is if you turn this into a component itself, you can actually be able to swap out your character. You'll be able to swap out different images and then have different characters. So we can actually set up a whole different set of these characters in the frame. I can grab the character and I can basically position the character where I want them. I'm going to put that, I'll make sure it's in the frame, of course. I'm going to put that character about there so that the character is kind of peeking out the top a little. And what I might even do is just make him just a tad bigger. And I might jot him out that way. There we go. Now you can see that he is already getting cut. That's not what I want, so I'm going to actually turn off clipping. And the good thing is, with this frame is the frame that I want to cut the character here. So I can actually cut in and find the right point of where I'd like to actually have this character flipped. Because that frame will do the clipping, the frame that it's in will not do the clipping on the character itself, which is what I want. This is the child frame of this. So I can click here and I can actually make it scale and stretch and squash, which means it will do that. And then eventually, if it gets crushed up, it will eventually stretch and squash and push up. So, to of course stop it from ever, if you need more height, all you'll need to do is just make sure you add more height here. But for this example, I would like it to have a little bit, and I'm building it at its maximum. And I mostly just expect my character to just... Basically, I expect my character to crunch in low and only a little bit. I'm going to have it a little bit up. Like, it'll pretty much stay about that height and mostly stretch that way. Like this one does, basically. Like, at a point, it will break, but by that point, we don't really mind. Okay. Oh yeah, and what we can do is also not worry about making it basically scaling at the top. So when we have the character selected in the character frame, it just is anchored to the bottom, like so. So we can go like that, and there you go. Because otherwise, yeah, you'll get controlled a little bit by the stretching and squashing there. So now we have that character, the character overlays the frame, it has quite a lot of movement, which is fantastic. And now we can set up our background. So I'll select the background image. I'm going to choose and create a frame, and I'm just going to call this one background. And in the background, in that same frame, I will actually just be putting in this little guy as well. And this is what I'm going to show you. It's a way to make this a little bit more interesting and dynamic. So the background itself can actually scale within the frame. So if I was to scale the frame, that background will actually stretch and squash to the frame, which is nice. That only kind of looks nice when I'm scaling it like this though. So what you can do is make sure that when you have this background element, instead of going from it all, I can just do that, like so. And that will allow the background to stretch outwards, and it pushes up and down, which is okay. But that's like within a reasonable range of what I would like it to do. What I can also do is get my tower or this kind of middle ground element, and I can actually, I'm just going to scale it a tad down. I'm just going to anchor it to the bottom. So like when this does scale up and scale down, it just moves across a little bit. And of course, it's up to you how you want to end up playing around and getting this to work the way you want. Another good idea would be to click on your background image and also choose one of the cropping. Just pull up you'll need to grab that image ideally. You pull that image up and you put it down, that would give it a little bit more room to have a bit more play with when you stretching and squashing your frame. We'll set that background. I'll just set the background to scale. Like, yeah, there we go. So now I have my background and I have my foreground. I can turn that into a component itself. I can duplicate that out and I can chuck it into the background of my character frame. I can use the square brackets if I want to. I can press that, which will actually push it back and forth within the frame that it's within. For example, if I click this, you can see that characters will switch back and forth, or the layers. And I'll just put that into the background of the card. I'm just going to center it like so. I'm going to scale that. I'm going to scale the background and I'm going to make sure that it fits within the frame. What ideally we want is just to have it where it is cutting from left to right a little more. So I'll make sure that actually is at the 512 mark. 512. There we go. All right. Overall, the background's in, the character's in, there is some overlay. That's okay. This is all what we want. What we can do now is we can actually just put a frame around that background. This is actually going to be the thing that holds the actual character into the card itself, or holds the background into the card, because the character overflows the card. So we'll create this, and this will just be the card. Like so. And what I can do is just make that card basic. This card's going to fill the frame that it's going to be within. I'm just going to hide the character to begin with, and I'm just going to make sure that this will be like this, but I'm also going to apply 48 padding. I'm going to do a rounding all over. I'm going to apply a stroke, and this stroke, what I will do is I'm going to actually use a gradient because I want it to look like this bit of a silver vibe, like what I've got over here, and then it darkens down the bottom. So I can start at the top, I can start with a light, I can go down to a dark black down the bottom. I might not use solid black though, so I'll keep it a bit above, and I'll keep it a bit above pure white at the same time. A nice little trick in addition to that is to select the outline, go to custom, and what we can do is we can actually make it 2 and 2 at the top corner and then go down to a 1 on the bottom. So it looks like it has I guess, a thinner dark shadow to a more pronounced highlight at the top, which is nice. And so I've got that set up, I've got my card, and this card sits within the frame. This frame, or as I said, I'll make sure that this frame is 512 by 512. I'll just reset that. And I'm just going to make sure that my content is centered to begin with, because we're going to set it into an auto layout. I always recommend, if you can, try to use an auto layout. They help you a lot and it will make your life a lot easier. I've got it centered in the frame and I can set it to an auto layout. And the reason why I hid this character here is because the character would actually be affected by that auto layout. If you hide it first and then you can set it to absolute and then you can show it, now you have a little bit, now the actual frame hasn't augmented itself to this character and what you wanted it to be. I'll just scale. What I want to do is I'm just going to go and I'm going to take my frame and I'm just going to pull my frame down to a smaller number now. So maybe it is 428 by 428. And I just need to make sure that my card within inside of it is technically meant to have been anchored. We'll just scale that in. And as we've scaled that card in, what I can do is I can actually just tell the actual card to scale to the frame, which is great. And the character is at that absolute, so I'll just make sure I have the character frame set to the bottom right, and I can now just go up the top here and say align to bottom and align to left, and there we go. And with my character frame, I may as well click this character frame up here and I'll just add that rounding, that 48 rounding onto it. What I'll do is I'll just make sure it cuts it down in the bottom there, which is really nice. And now I have my background, and my background does a little bit of movement, which is nice. And my character is anchored on that side of the card, so if the card it basically scales out, it will move like, which is nice. And really from here, it's up to you how you want to go about it. You have the abilities, of course, to scale up and adjust and configure the elements within the frame here. And I would suggest play around, get it to something that you like. I'm pretty happy. I'll just probably move the character a bit to the side, and I'd probably move the foreground tower just a bit in. And as you can see, the character also gets clipped at that side, which is exactly what I want. What I can do is I can remove that background, and I practically have my complete card here. So the actual background, which is the card, actually scales to the frame, and the character will continue to sit in that corner. The last thing that I can do is just to create that little bit of wizard part that I put down the bottom here. I'm just going to use the same text. I put a few bits of styling on that text just to give it a little bit more, but you can style that however you like. I'm going to call this name, and I put a auto layout around it. I can set, let's say, some padding on it if I like, and I can throw that into the frame. What I can do is put it up here. It will need to be set to a absolute as well, because the card is the only one that is basically filling the container. I'm just going to grab that. I'm going to basically align it to the bottom, and I will align it to the center. I'm just going to drag out each side of the frame so it goes to either side of the card. And once I've finished doing that, I can actually go here and I can say you can be anchored from left to right. That means that it will stick from the left to the right the way that I want, and it will sit into that bottom. Now I will put probably maybe 24 padding, give it a bit more height. In the background of the name, I'm going to do a fill, and I'll just do a dark gradient. I'm going to basically flip that around. I'm going to choose a darker color, or you can choose any other color if you like. In this scenario, I guess I could actually, let's do it a little bit different. We'll go with potentially some of that kind of bluey purple going on. And as you can see, we still have that overlap. That means that I need to go to that name frame. I'm just going to go down, click this, and then I'll be able to add that 48 cut. Make sure that I have clipping on. So that because I have clipping on now, it will basically sit on the bottom there like so. And I'll be able to, of course, stretch and squash that. I noticed that my background card, just double check. Yep, that's still good. And yeah, just make sure my background card is scaling to the card, or the background scaling to that card frame. Like, there we go. And I guess last of all, it's just to make sure that this should technically be anchored like that. I don't want it to be stretching. I'll go fill. So I just set the image in the background to fill instead of having it cropped. Sometimes, yeah, if it just fills the image in the background, we'll attempt to fill the container the best it can, which is good. That seems good to me. And I'll just make that just a tad bigger instead. As you see, when you have overflow, it just means that if you have that overflow, it means that when the card itself stretches and squashes, it has a bit there still, like. That's pretty much about it. We have the card in the bottom, we have the names, we got the character, we have the ability, we can switch out these imagery, and we can reuse that card again and again if we want. And it basically completely adapts, so that's really nice. Beyond that, I think I would turn this into a component. I would probably select the text. I'd probably create that to be basically a name. This one, of course, is saying wizard. And what we can do is just set up a quick little max and min. So I'm going to say that the card's minimum will probably, and you can play test this around if you like, but let's say 320 by 320 would probably be the smallest that we want to go. So we can set that, let's say we got 320 in width, and we'll set a minimum of 360 in height. And then we can, so obviously we won't be able to make it smaller than that. And then if we want to build it out and pull it out, we could probably get to, I'd say I'm happy with scaling it up. Probably 512 in height would be our maximum. And on the width front, I'm okay with it getting probably to 620. So we can set the max width and say it's 620. So there we go. Basically, we have our dynamic card. It overlaps. It has a max and min. You can fill up, fill out, and overlap our borders. And we can just basically duplicate this a bunch of times, stick it into an auto layout. Great thing is we can make it fill the auto layout, and that auto layout could also, for example, like this one, this frame, could even have wrapping into it. We could do things like that, which is pretty cool. Overall, I hope that you have enjoyed the video, and I hope it's been helpful. Please let me know in the comments section below. And until next time, design thinkers, keep thinking, keep building, and keep creating amazing things. I'll see you all in the next video.